Join me right now and welcome me to the program, Dan Aykroyd. Dan, it's good to see you again.
Yes, indeed. We've met a couple of times on these ventures.
Been far too long since our last visit, I think, and you've certainly been busy.
Yeah.
Several tremendously impressive films. I think last time, in fact, we talked was just before the release of Trading Places, which went on to be a smash box office hit. Now, this is something that nobody really, I don't think, ever knows, do they, whether or not a picture will actually click. Now, you may have some good idea that, hey, what we're doing is good. But did you know that Trading Places would be as big as it was?
Well, I had a good feeling about it from the very beginning, when first contacted by Paramount through Eddie Murphy's auspices. He was given the script. It was written for Wilder and Pryor, and they didn't want to do it for some reason or another. And Eddie was hot from the show, from 48 Hours, from his record successes. Paramount wanted to follow it up with a good venture, so they gave him the script. He read it. He immediately took over and said, well, I love Blues Brothers. I'd like Landis to direct it, and I want Aykroyd to play the fallen commodities broker. And Landis and I were contacted. We got the script. We met in the parking lot outside our offices at Universal, kind of looked at each other and said, well, let's do it. And it came together very fast. And so essentially Eddie packaged the whole thing. And I knew from his involvement, from Landis's direction, and when we cast Ralph Bellamy and Don Amici, that we'd have something there. And just the general quality of the film was so great, and the way it was shot, and
it had a very rich look to it, appropriately.
And everybody did a great job. Everybody in the cast was, I think, superb. I can safely say.
Yeah, I think the crowning touch, though, was the casting of Mr. Amici and Mr. Bellamy. They added something.
Yeah, it was wonderful to work with them.
You have most recently done and this certainly won't be giving anything away because you're in the credits, a cameo appearance in what is destined to be one of the big hits of all time, Indiana Jones, for Steven Spielberg. When you do something like this, now, was it just on a lark? Did Steven Spielberg call up and say, hey, would you like to do a... Well,
actually, I called him, and I think it was mentioned that maybe I could do something in it, and then I kind of followed them up on the offer. I went into Frank Marshall's office and said, you mentioned that I might be involved here. I mean, I was dying to get involved in this thing and work with these people, you know. And I knew I could do a nice, tasty bit in disguise, as it were, and plan something out nicely. So they asked me to do that, and they went away and shot in Sri Lanka. And the last night of shooting on the film was when I shot that sequence. It was up in San Francisco at Hamilton Air Base up there. And actually, Stephen and George are in the sequence, the same sequence. They're missionaries in the background.
Are they really?
Yeah. So it was kind of a fun night because they were all just wrapping up the picture, and I jumped in with great enthusiasm, and they were quite gracious to have me aboard.
Let's talk about Ghostbusters, because this primarily, as I understand it, was your idea.
Well, let me say that I set down the first draft, the blueprint for the sets, the basic sets, the basic designs and graphics and hardware and characters and part of the story, and it really didn't become what you saw the other night until I hooked up with Ivan and Harold Ramis. And I work in a collaborative way. I don't think any writer in Hollywood writes a script and clutches it close to his breast and says, you're not going to touch this. I mean, they just wouldn't work. I like to write and throw it in the ring and see what other people's changes are. And Ivan really shaped the movie and made it as tight as it appears. It really comes off tightly.
When you're working with comedy, I want to say, is it more of a collaborative effort? Because obviously comedy requires so much more, because you know instantly whether it's funny or whether it's not. Do you have to be a little more careful when you're dealing with comedy, to trust the people around you to have the same vision that you do?
I think so. In any work, you've got to trust who you're collaborating with. But first of all, it's important in comedy to work with qualified people who know the work and know how to, deliver a line and know a little bit about timing and reaction. And of course, it always helps to work with Second City people because they're fully schooled in the techniques.
What happens, though, has it happened to you thus far that you've been faced with a co-star who simply doesn't know the first thing about comedy timing?
Really didn't never really had that problem in films.
Good.
You know, everyone, I think every good actor knows how to do comedy, and
Yeah.
so that really hasn't been a problem. I've been blessed with great collaborators and great people to support and to have support from.
You have worked in a number of the biggest comedies ever made, really. Certainly in 1941, you don't get much bigger than that. And I think that movie has, I think in years to come, will be more appreciated than it was at the time of its release, because it has, I think, some of the most brilliant set pieces of any picture I've seen.
It's a very well-made movie. I mean, exceptionally well-made. And I think what happened was people were misled in the advertising. It was put out there as a John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd vehicle, and really it wasn't. There were a lot of other people in it and a lot of other story, and John and I really didn't have any business together. So they advertised it, you know, and I think maybe the public may have reacted adversely to that, you know.
Yeah.
They may have thought that they were misled somehow in some way, and that might have been part of the reaction. I'm not sure what it eventually did at the box office, but I, you know, understand that it's into rental profit now.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, it costs so much money to produce.
And many of them do. And, you know, frankly, it's good for labor in Hollywood. A big picture is good for labor. Because all that money, you know, and when you... See, we spend all this money on these movies, but the audience, you only have to pay $5 to see it. You know? I mean, I think it's a pretty good value. $5 for so many millions on the screen. And it's kind of the best bargain in entertainment today, the movies are.
Being a creator as well as a performer, as far as comedy is concerned, where do you think this is one of those esoteric questions, where do you think the art of comedy is today in films? Are we at a peak? Do you think historians will look back on this period with the same affection they look back on the Marx Brothers, W.C. Fields, etc.? Where are we right now?
I think we're in basically the same veins as we always have been. I mean, Ghostbusters itself is kind of a tried concept, you know, in American comedy. Everybody did it. Abbott and Costello, Olsen and Johnson, the Ritz Brothers, the Bowery Boys did 3 ghost-chasing movies, although usually it ended up in those movies that there really wasn't a ghost there. It was some kind of man-made mechanical illusion.
Yeah.
And Bob Hope did Ghostbreakers, of course, using special effects. And Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis did a movie, and they used the same special effect that Bob Hope did. Now, we had the advantage in this generation being able to write a ghost story and yet employ all the research and development that's been done in special effects in the last 10 years, you see. So we really have sort of one up on people in the past.
But you don't think audiences' perception of comedy really has changed all that much?
I
mean, they really still laugh at the Marx Brothers. They still laugh at Fields, etc.
Sure. I think that they're just basic things that make people laugh. Just humor of identification and replication. You know, one sees life on the street, and then if a comedian can recreate it on the stage, then the laugh is much bigger because it's something that the audience knows and can relate to. I think they're just basic rules that have to be followed in comedy, and we're doing it based upon the work of predecessors like Phil Silvers, Lucille Ball, Desi Arnaz, Fields and Allen. You know, we learned, George Burns and Gracie Allen. We learn from all of them and sort of apply their techniques and timing and delivery. And
who were your particular comedy heroes or heroines?
well, all those people I met, basically the television comedians. You know, as I say, Lucy and Desi, Burns and Allen, Phil Silvers, Jackie Gleason, Red Skelton, Carol Burnett. You know, you watch these people and you learn from them. And
I still think some of those scripts for the I Love Lucy shows are among the best ever written.
Yeah, and Desi Arnaz, I think, is one of the greatest, you know, in terms of reactions and timing and setup and everything. He's really got a skill.
Dan, I want to thank you once again for taking time out, and much success with your film, The Ghostbusters, and I look forward to our next talk.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.